The dust rose in golden clouds around Sarah Thompson's boots as she stood at the corral fence, watching 300 head of unmarked cattle mill about in confusion. And she knew that without brands on their hides before the territorial inspectors arrived in 2 weeks, she would lose everything her husband had built before the fever took him 6 months ago. Her hands gripped the weathered wood until splinters threatened to pierce her palms. The ranch stretched across 2,000 acres of Oklahoma grassland just outside Muskogee, land that Thomas had claimed in the land run of 1889, land he had worked until his fingers bled and his back bent. Now it was 1891, and Sarah was 24 years old, alone except for 2 ranch hands who had disappeared the morning after Thomas was buried, taking their pay and her best horses with them. The April sun beat down mercilessly, unusual for spring but not unheard of in this territory that seemed to make its own rules about weather and everything else. Sarah wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand and tried to calculate how one woman could possibly brand 300 cattle in 14 days. The mathematics of it made her want to weep, but she had done enough crying in the past 6 months to last a lifetime. Mrs. Thompson. Sarah spun around to find her nearest neighbor, old Pete Garrison, leaning against his wagon. His face was lined with sympathy, which she had learned to dread more than contempt. "Pete," she acknowledged, straightening her spine. "Heard you got troubles with the branding." Pete shifted his weight, uncomfortable. "Wish I could help, but my boys are all up north driving cattle to Kansas. Won't be back for 2 months at least." "I understand," Sarah said, forcing her voice to remain steady. "You thought about selling." "I know the Hendersons would give you a fair price for the land and stock." Sarah had thought about it. She had thought about it every night when she lay alone in the bed she had shared with Thomas, staring at the ceiling beams he had hewn himself. She had thought about it every morning when she woke before dawn to feed the chickens and milk the cow and try to keep this impossible operation running with her own 2 hands. "This is my home," she said simply. Pete nodded slowly. "Thomas was a good man, stubborn but good. I can see he married his match." He tipped his hat. "Offer stands if you change your mind." After he left, Sarah walked back to the house, a sturdy 2-room structure with a loft that Thomas had promised to expand into a proper home once they had children. That dream felt as distant now as the stars. She was washing dishes in the basin when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Her heart leapt with irrational hope, then settled back into its usual resigned rhythm. Probably another neighbor coming to offer sympathy or suggestions to sell. But when she stepped onto the porch, shading her eyes against the afternoon glare, she saw 4 riders approaching. The man in front sat tall in his saddle, and even from a distance, she could see the easy confidence of someone who had spent more time on horseback than on foot. 3 younger men rode behind him, clearly his sons by the similar set of their shoulders and the way they handled their horses. Sarah waited, her hand resting on the porch post, as the riders drew closer. The lead man was perhaps in his early 30s, with sun-darkened skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar beneath his wide-brimmed hat. His eyes, she noticed as he reined in his horse, were a startling blue against his tanned face. "Madam," he said, touching his hat brim. "Name's Cole Maddox. These are my sons, James, William, and Henry." He gestured to each in turn. The boys ranged in age from perhaps 12 to 18, all watching her with curious but respectful eyes. "Sarah Thompson," she replied, studying them. Something in Cole Maddox's voice suggested he had not come merely to offer condolences or advice she did not want. "We have a ranch about 15 miles west of here," Cole continued. "Finished our branding 2 days ago. Heard in town that you might be in need of some help with yours." Sarah's throat tightened. Pride warred with desperation, and desperation was winning. I have 300 head that need branding before the inspectors come. I can pay, but not much. Thomas left me some savings, but Cole held up a hand. Not asking for pay, Mrs. Thompson. Out here, neighbors help neighbors. That's how we all survive. I cannot accept charity, Sarah said, the words automatic even as her mind screamed at her to accept whatever help was offered. It is not charity, Cole said, and his voice was gentle but firm. Your husband would have done the same for me if positions were reversed. I knew Thomas, not well but enough to know he was the kind of man who would ride through a storm to help someone in need. It was true. Thomas had been exactly that kind of man. Besides, Cole added, a slight smile touching his lips, my boys need the practice. James here thinks he is already the best roper in the territory. Nothing like a few hundred head of cattle to teach humility. The boy Cole had indicated as James, the oldest, grinned. I am the best roper in the territory, he said with teenage confidence. We will see about that, his father replied dryly. Sarah felt something in her chest loosen just slightly. When would you want to start? Dawn tomorrow, if that suits you. We brought our camping gear. Can set up by your creek if you do not mind. Will take us maybe 4 or 5 days if we work steady. 4 or 5 days. Sarah had been facing an impossible task, and this stranger was offering to reduce it to less than a week. She wanted to weep again, but for entirely different reasons than before. The creek is fine, she managed. And I insist on feeding you at least. I am a good cook, whatever else I might lack in ranching skills. Deal, Cole said, and his smile transformed his face from merely handsome to something that made Sarah's heart skip in a way it had not since Thomas died. She pushed the feeling away, guilt washing over her. It had only been 6 months. She had no business noticing whether a man was handsome or how his smile changed his face. I will have coffee ready before dawn, she said, keeping her voice businesslike. Cole touched his hat again, and the 4 Maddox men rode toward the creek to make their camp. Sarah stood on her porch watching them go, trying to ignore the small flame of hope that had kindled in her chest. That night, she cooked a larger meal than she had made since Thomas died. Venison stew with potatoes and carrots from her root cellar, biscuits hot from the oven, and an apple pie using her precious remaining store of dried apples. When she carried the food down to the creek as the sun was setting, she found the Maddox camp neat and orderly, the boys tending horses while Cole built a fire. You did not have to go to this trouble, Cole said as she approached, but his eyes lit up at the sight of the food. You are doing me an enormous kindness, Sarah replied. This is the least I can do. The boys descended on the food with the enthusiasm of young men who worked hard and ate harder. Sarah found herself smiling as she watched them, remembering how Thomas had talked about the sons he hoped to have. Boys who would help run the ranch and carry on what he had started. Your wife must miss you when you are away, Sarah said to Cole as they sat slightly apart from the boys, who were engaged in some good-natured argument about who had caught the biggest fish from the creek that afternoon. Cole's face shadowed. My wife died 4 years ago. Pneumonia. It was quick, at least. She did not suffer long. I am sorry, Sarah said, and she meant it. She understood that particular pain now in a way she never would have 6 months ago. And I am sorry for your loss, Cole replied. Thomas was young, that must make it harder somehow. He was 28. We had been married 3 years. Sarah stared into the fire. We were going to have children, expand the house, maybe get some sheep as well as cattle. We had so many plans. Plans are fragile things out here, Cole said quietly. I learned that the hard way. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, united by their shared understanding of loss and the burden of carrying on alone. "How do you manage?" Sarah asked finally. "With the boys and the ranch and everything." "Some days better than others," Cole admitted. "The boys help more than they know. Gives me a reason to keep going, to build something for their future. James is 18 now, old enough to run his own operation soon if he wants. William is 15 and Henry just turned 12. They are good boys, even if they do eat enough for a small army." Sarah laughed, surprising herself. It felt strange laughing, like a muscle she had forgotten how to use. "They seem very capable," she said. "They have had to be. Losing their mother taught them early that life does not wait for you to be ready." Cole looked at her directly then, and Sarah felt the full force of his attention. "But you know something about that now, too." "Yes," she agreed softly. "I do." When she returned to her house later that night, Sarah lay in bed thinking about Cole Maddox and his 3 sons. She thought about the way he had spoken of his wife, with old grief but not fresh pain. She thought about his offer of help, asking nothing in return except the satisfaction of being neighborly. And she thought, with a small flutter of something that might have been guilt or might have been possibility, about the way her heart had responded to his smile. Thomas would not want her to be alone forever. She knew that. He had been a practical man, and he would have expected her to eventually move forward with her life. But 6 months felt too soon, too raw, too much like a betrayal of everything they had shared. Sarah forced her thoughts away from such complicated territory and focused instead on the practical reality that tomorrow, for the first time since Thomas died, she would have real help with the ranch. That was enough to think about for now. Dawn came cold and clear, the way Oklahoma mornings did even after hot days. Sarah had coffee boiling and bacon frying when Cole and his sons arrived at the house. They ate quickly, efficiently, like men who knew the value of getting an early start. "The branding iron still in your barn?" Cole asked as they finished. "Yes, and there is plenty of wood for the fire. Thomas always kept a good supply." "Smart man. We will start with the cattle in the near pasture, work our way out to the farther herds. James and William are good ropers. Henry will help with the fire and bringing the irons." "Mrs. Thompson, I can rope," Sarah interrupted. "Maybe not as well as your sons, but Thomas taught me. I can help." Cole looked at her for a long moment and she lifted her chin, daring him to argue. Finally, he nodded. "All right then. We will work in pairs. James, you are with me. William, you partner with Mrs. Thompson. Henry, you are on the irons." They worked through the morning in a rhythm that gradually became smoother as they learned each other's styles. Sarah was indeed a competent roper, though she lacked the strength to handle the larger steers. William proved to be patient and skilled, taking the difficult catches and leaving her the smaller animals. Cole and James worked with the fluid coordination of long practice, and young Henry kept the branding irons at perfect temperature, never letting the fire get too hot or too cool. By midday, they had branded 60 head. Sarah's arms ached and her hands were raw despite her gloves, but satisfaction surged through her. 60 head in one morning. At this rate, they would finish in 4 days easily. She prepared lunch while the men rested the horses, then they worked through the afternoon until the light began to fail. 120 cattle now bore the Thompson brand, a simple T-cross that Thomas had designed. "Good first day," Cole said as they released the last branded steer. "You did well, Mrs. Thompson." "Sarah," she said impulsively. "If we are going to be working together for days, you should call me Sarah." "Sarah," he repeated, and she liked the way her name sounded in his voice. "Then you should call me Cole." That evening she again brought food to their camp. The boys were tired but cheerful, swapping stories of the day's close calls and successful catches. Sarah found herself lingering, enjoying the warmth of their company and the easy banter between father and sons. "Your mother would be proud of you boys," she said as William recounted a particularly difficult roping. The boys grew quiet for a moment, and Sarah worried she had overstepped. But then James smiled. "She always said we were half wild," he said. "Guess she was right." "The good half," Cole added, ruffling Henry's hair. The boy ducked away but grinned. "Tell me about her," Sarah said softly, "if it is not too painful." Cole exchanged glances with his sons, and something passed between them, some silent communication that families develop over years of shared life. "Her name was Margaret," Cole began. "She was small, barely came up to my shoulder, but fierce, had red hair that she hated and I loved. She was a teacher back in Missouri before we married, insisted on teaching the boys herself even after we moved out here. She made us read Shakespeare," William said, making a face. "Can you imagine Shakespeare while branding cattle?" "Education matters," James said in a voice that suggested he was quoting his mother. "She was right about that." "She sounds wonderful," Sarah said. "She was," Cole agreed. "And stubborn. When she got an idea in her head, there was no changing her mind." "Sounds like someone else I know," James said, looking pointedly at his father. Cole threw a stick at him, but he was smiling later. As Sarah walked back to her house, she reflected on the easy love evident in the Maddox family. Cole had raised his sons well, keeping his wife's memory alive while also moving forward. It gave her hope that perhaps, eventually, she could find that balance too. The next 3 days fell into a comfortable pattern. They worked from dawn until dusk, breaking only for quick meals. Sarah's body ached in ways she had forgotten were possible, but it was a good ache, the kind that came from honest work and visible progress. The boys began to tease her gently, the way they teased each other, and she found herself responding in kind. Cole watched these interactions with an expression she could not quite read, something warm and pleased and maybe a little wistful. On the 4th evening, with all the cattle branded and only the cleanup remaining, Sarah made a special dinner. She killed one of her chickens, a sacrifice but one she felt the occasion warranted, and made her mother's recipe for chicken and dumplings. She carried it to the camp along with fresh bread and butter and the last of her precious coffee. "This is a feast," Cole said, his eyes widening at the spread. "You saved my ranch," Sarah replied simply. "This is the least I can do." As they ate, James cleared his throat. "Mrs. Thompson, Sarah, I have been thinking. You are going to need help around here. Regular help, I mean. The branding is done, but there is always work on a ranch this size." "James," Cole said, a warning in his voice. "No, Pa, hear me out. What if William and I came over a few days a week, just to help with the heavy work, mending fences and such? Henry and you can manage our place, and we would be earning our keep, learning to run an operation." Sarah looked at Cole, who seemed torn between pride in his son's initiative and concern about overstepping. "I could pay a little," Sarah said slowly. "Not much, but something." "We do not need pay," William said quickly. "James is right. We could use the experience and you could use the help." "Boys," Cole said firmly, "this is not your decision to make." "But Pa, he is right," Sarah interrupted gently. "It is kind of you to offer, and I would be grateful for the help, but this is between your father and me to decide." The boys subsided, though James looked mutinous. After dinner, Cole helped Sarah carry the dishes back to the house. It was the first time he had come to her home, and she found herself seeing it through his eyes. Neat but sparse, the furniture Thomas had made by hand, the curtains she had sewn, the absence of all the things they had planned to add over the years. "It is a good house," Cole said, as if reading her thoughts. "Solid. Thomas built it himself. He was good with his hands. They stood on the porch, the dishes between them, and Sarah knew this was the moment to discuss the boys' offer. But she found herself reluctant to break the comfortable silence that had fallen between them. "They mean well," Cole said finally. "The boys, they have big hearts, and they remember what it was like after Margaret died, when neighbors helped us through. They are wonderful young men. You have raised them well. I have tried. Some days I worry I am failing them, trying to be both mother and father." "I think you are doing better than you know," Sarah said softly. Cole looked at her then, really looked at her, and Sarah felt heat rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the lingering warmth of the day. "About their offer," Cole said. "If you truly could use the help, I would not object to them coming by a few days a week. But only if you let me pay you for their meals. Growing boys eat a lot, and I will not have you sacrificing your supplies to feed my sons. That hardly seems fair. They would be helping me. Then we will call it even. They help you, you feed them, and everyone benefits." Sarah considered this. The truth was, she did need help. Regular help. The kind that two strong young men could provide. And the thought of the Maddox family remaining part of her life, even in this limited way, made her realize how lonely she had been these past months. "All right," she agreed. "Tuesdays and Thursdays, if that works for you. Perfect. That gives them time to help me on our ranch and learn from you on yours." "Learn from me," Sarah laughed. "I am hardly an expert. You have kept this place running alone for 6 months. That makes you more of an expert than most." The compliment warmed her more than it should have. "Thank you, Cole, for everything. I do not know how I can ever repay you. You just did, by trusting me enough to let my sons keep helping. That means more than you know." He left then, returning to his camp, and Sarah stood on her porch for a long time, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. Something had shifted between her and Cole Maddox, something subtle but undeniable. She was not sure she was ready for it, but she could not deny its existence either. The next morning, the Maddox family packed up their camp. Sarah had made a large breakfast as a final thank you, and they ate together in her kitchen, crowded around the table Thomas had built. "You will take care of yourself," Cole said as they prepared to leave. "And if you need anything at all, you send word." "I will," Sarah promised, "and I will see James and William on Tuesday." "We will be here at dawn," James assured her. As they rode away, Sarah felt the familiar weight of solitude settling back over her shoulders. But it was lighter now somehow, knowing that she was not completely alone, that help and friendship were only a few miles away. True to their word, James and William arrived at dawn on Tuesday. They worked hard, mending the fence line that had been damaged during the winter, cleaning out the barn, and tackling a dozen other tasks that Sarah had been putting off or attempting herself with limited success. She fed them a hearty lunch and sent them home with leftover cornbread. "Pa was right," William said as they were leaving. "You are a good cook." "Your father said that?" Sarah asked, pleased despite herself. "He says a lot of things about you," James said, then caught himself, his ears turning red. "I mean good things, respectful things." "I am glad," Sarah said, fighting a smile at the boy's embarrassment. Over the following weeks, a pattern emerged. James and William came twice a week, sometimes 3 times if there was extra work to be done. They were good company, hard-working and cheerful, and Sarah found herself looking forward to their visits. She baked extra bread on Mondays in anticipation of their Tuesday arrival. She made sure to have cold water waiting for them on hot days and hot coffee ready on cool ones. And once a week, like clockwork, Cole would ride over in the evening to pick up his sons if they were staying late, or simply to check in if they had already returned home. These visits stretched longer each time. First, he would just stay for a few minutes on his horse. Then he began dismounting and accepting a cup of coffee on the porch. Eventually, Sarah began timing her dinners so she had extra when she knew he might be coming by, and he began staying to eat. They talked about everything and nothing. About ranching and weather and the territorial politics that were heating up as Oklahoma moved closer to statehood. About their pasts, their losses, their hopes for the future. Cole told her about Missouri and why he had come west, searching for a fresh start after Margaret's death. Sarah told him about growing up in Texas, the daughter of a shopkeeper, and how she had met Thomas at a church social when he was passing through on his way to Oklahoma. "Were you happy?" Cole asked one evening. They were sitting on her porch steps, watching the sun set over the grassland. "With Thomas, I mean." "Yes," Sarah said honestly. "He was a good man, a kind husband. We were happy." She paused, then added, "But we were also very young. Sometimes I wonder who we would have become as we grew older, whether we would have stayed as well matched." That is a surprisingly mature thought for someone who is, 24? 25 now. "My birthday was last week." Cole turned to look at her. "You should have said something. We would have celebrated." "It did not seem important." "Of course it is important." He was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Will you tell me next year? So I can make sure it is properly acknowledged." The implication that he would still be part of her life a year from now made Sarah's heart flutter. "I will tell you." As spring turned to summer, Sarah began to notice the small ways her life had changed. She smiled more. She laughed at William's terrible jokes and James's dramatic stories. She found herself taking more care with her appearance on the days she knew Cole might visit, brushing her dark hair until it shone and wearing her better dress instead of her work clothes. She also noticed the way Cole looked at her sometimes, when he thought she was not paying attention. The way his eyes followed her movements as she poured coffee or served food. The way he found excuses to stand close to her, to hand her tools or help her reach something from a high shelf. Neither of them spoke of the tension growing between them. It felt too new, too fragile, too complicated by their respective losses. But it was there, undeniable as the Oklahoma heat. In late June, a storm rolled in, one of the violent summer thunderstorms that the territory was known for. Sarah had battened down everything she could and was preparing to ride out the storm alone when she heard pounding on her door. She opened it to find Cole, soaked through and leading his horse. "Storm caught me halfway between our places," he shouted over the wind. "Can I shelter here?" "Of course." Sarah pulled him inside and took his dripping hat. "Take your horse to the barn. There is space in the stall next to my mare." While Cole tended his horse, Sarah built up the fire and put coffee on to heat. She pulled out dry clothes that had belonged to Thomas, hesitating only a moment before deciding that her dead husband would approve of his things being useful rather than sitting in a trunk gathering dust. Cole returned, dripping and shivering. Sarah handed him the clothes and pointed to the bedroom where he could change. When he emerged, the shirt pulled tight across his broader shoulders. She felt her breath catch. Thomas had been tall and lean. Cole was more solid, more powerfully built from years of hard ranch work. "Thank you," he said, hanging his wet things near the fire. "I should have paid more attention to the sky." "These storms come up fast," Sarah said. "Sit down, the coffee will be ready soon." They sat at the table, listening to the rain hammer the roof and the wind howl around the corners of the house. Thunder cracked overhead, close enough to rattle the windows. "House is holding strong," Cole observed. "Thomas built well." "He did." Sarah poured coffee for both of them. "I just hope the barn holds. I repaired the roof last month, but I am not sure my carpentry is as good as his was. I could look at it when the storm passes, make sure everything is secure. You do not have to do that." "Sarah," Cole said, and there was something in his voice that made her look up sharply. "I know I do not have to. I want to." Their eyes met across the table, and the air between them suddenly felt charged with more than just the electricity from the storm outside. "Cole," Sarah began, but she did not know how to finish the sentence. He reached across the table and took her hand. His palm was warm and calloused against hers. "I know it has not been very long, for either of us. And I know this probably is not proper, and I should give you more time, but Sarah, I need you to know that I have feelings for you, strong feelings." Sarah's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he must be able to hear it. "I have feelings for you too," she admitted. "I have tried not to. It seems too soon, too disloyal somehow to Thomas's memory." "Thomas is gone," Cole said gently, "and I think, from what I knew of him and what you have told me, he would not want you to spend the rest of your life alone out of loyalty to him. I know that in my head. But my heart feels guilty anyway. I understand. God knows I do. I felt the same way when I first realized I was attracted to you, like I was betraying Margaret somehow." Cole squeezed her hand. "But then I realized that Margaret would have wanted me to be happy. She loved me, truly loved me, and that kind of love does not demand endless mourning." "When did you know?" Sarah asked softly. "That you had feelings for me?" Cole smiled a little sheepishly. "That first morning when you insisted you could rope. The way you lifted your chin and dared me to argue. I thought you were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen, all fire and determination." "That is not true. I was a mess, all dusty and probably red-faced from the heat." "You were beautiful," Cole repeated firmly. "You are beautiful." No one had called Sarah beautiful in a long time. Thomas had loved her, but he had not been given to flowery words or romantic gestures. This direct declaration from Cole made her feel like her skin was too tight, like she might burst from the emotions swelling inside her. "I was attracted to you right away too," she confessed. "Then I felt terrible about it for weeks. I kept telling myself it was just gratitude or loneliness, but I knew it was more than that." "So what do we do about it?" Cole asked. Sarah took a shaky breath. "I do not know. What do people do when they are widowed and find each other and are not sure if it is too soon or too fast or too complicated?" "I guess they figure it out together," Cole said. "We do not have to rush anything. We can take this slow, see where it goes. I'm not going anywhere, Sarah. I am here for as long as you want me." "I want you here," Sarah said, the words coming out more fervently than she intended. "I have been alone for so long, and I am tired of it. I am tired of being lonely and scared and trying to do everything by myself." Cole stood and came around the table, pulling her to her feet. For a moment, they just stood there, facing each other. Then, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. It was soft and sweet and tentative, nothing like the passionate kisses Sarah had read about in the few romance novels she had smuggled into her room as a girl. But it was perfect in its gentleness, a promise rather than a demand, a question rather than an assumption. When they pulled apart, Sarah was crying. "I am sorry," she said, wiping at her eyes. "I am not sad, I am just overwhelmed." "It is all right," Cole murmured, pulling her into his arms. She rested her head against his chest and felt the steady beat of his heart. "We have time, all the time we need." They stood like that for a long while, holding each other as the storm raged outside. Eventually, the thunder moved off into the distance and the rain settled into a steady patter. "I should check on the animals," Sarah said reluctantly. "We should check on the animals," Cole corrected. "Together." They went out into the wet evening, the air clean and cool after the heat of the day. Everything was secure, the barn roof had held, and the animals were calm. As they walked back to the house, Cole took Sarah's hand again, and she laced her fingers through his. "Will you stay for dinner?" she asked. The storm will probably keep up for a while yet. I would like that, Cole said. They cooked together, moving around her small kitchen with surprising coordination. Cole chopped vegetables while Sarah prepared the venison she had been saving. They talked about small things, easy things, but underneath it all was the awareness of what had shifted between them. After dinner, Cole helped her wash dishes, and when they were done, he said reluctantly, "I should head back. The boys will be worrying." "Of course," Sarah said, trying to hide her disappointment. At the door, Cole paused. "Can I come back tomorrow? Not with the boys, just me. We could talk more, spend some time together properly." "I would like that very much." He kissed her again, less tentative this time, and Sarah felt warmth spread through her entire body. "Tomorrow, then," he said, touching her cheek gently before heading out into the drizzle. Sarah closed the door and leaned against it, her fingers touching her lips where Cole had kissed her. She felt like a girl again, giddy and nervous and excited. But she also felt guilty, as if she had betrayed Thomas by moving on so quickly. That night, she lay in bed and had a conversation with her dead husband in her mind. She told him about Cole, about the feelings she was developing, about how guilty she felt. And in her imagination, Thomas smiled at her the way he always had and said, "Be happy, Sarah. That is all I ever wanted for you." It was what she needed to hear, even if it came from her own mind rather than from him directly. Cole arrived just after dawn the next morning, as he had promised. He helped her with morning chores, and then they walked out to the far pasture where the cattle grazed peacefully in the fresh morning air. "Tell me about your dreams," Cole said as they leaned against a fence rail. "What do you want for your future, for this ranch?" Sarah considered the question. "I want to build it up, make it something substantial. Thomas started something good here, and I want to honor that by making it successful. I want to prove that a woman can run a ranch as well as any man." "You already have proven that," Cole pointed out. "To you, maybe. But there are plenty of people in Muskogee who think I should have sold out months ago. Then you will prove them wrong." Cole turned to face her. "And I will help you however I can. What about your dreams? What do you want?" Cole was quiet for a long moment. "I want my sons to have good lives, to have the opportunities I did not have. I want to keep building my ranch so I can pass something substantial on to them. And I want to be happy again, Sarah. I want to wake up in the morning with something to look forward to beyond just work." "Do you think we could have that? Happiness?" "I think we could have something good together. Different from what we had before, but good in its own way." Over the following weeks, Cole became a regular presence at Sarah's ranch. He came alone sometimes, sometimes with one or more of his sons. He helped with heavy work, taught her better techniques for managing cattle, and generally made himself indispensable. But more than that, he made her laugh. He brought joy back into her life, made her remember what it felt like to have someone to share things with. In late July, Cole invited Sarah to his ranch for the first time. She rode over on a Sunday afternoon and found a spread that was larger than hers but similarly well maintained. The house was bigger, built for a family, and Sarah could see Margaret's influence in small touches. Curtains in the windows, a garden plot near the kitchen door, a swing hanging from a massive oak tree. The boys greeted her warmly, and she could see they had been preparing for her visit. The house was cleaner than she suspected it usually was, and Henry proudly showed her the cookies he had baked with James's supervision. "They are delicious," Sarah said after trying one, and Henry beamed. Cole gave her a tour of the ranch, and Sarah was impressed by the operation he had built. He ran about 500 head of cattle, had a string of good horses, and even kept some pigs and chickens. "It is wonderful," she said sincerely. "You have done so well here." "It has been hard work, but worth it," Cole replied. "The boys have been a big help, especially James, the last few years." They had dinner together, all 5 of them crowded around the large table in Cole's kitchen. The boys teased each other and told stories, and Sarah felt a pang of longing. This was what she had imagined her future would look like. A full table, laughter, family. After dinner, Cole walked her out to where she had tied her horse. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Thank you for coming," Cole said. "It meant a lot to the boys and to me. Thank you for having me. Your home is lovely." "It is lonely sometimes," Cole admitted. "Rattling around in that big house with just the boys. I built it for Margaret, made it big enough for the family we planned to have. She wanted 6 children. 6, Sarah laughed. "That is a lot of children. She grew up in a big family." "Wanted the same for our kids." Cole smiled sadly. "We only managed 3 before she died. Sometimes I feel like I failed her, not giving her the big family she wanted." "You did not fail her," Sarah said firmly. "You gave her 3 wonderful sons and a happy life. No one can ask for more than that." "What about you? Did you and Thomas want children?" "Yes, but it never happened. We were not worried about it. We thought we had time." Sarah swallowed hard. "That is the thing about time. You think you have so much of it, and then suddenly it is gone." Cole took her hand. "We cannot waste the time we do have, Sarah. Life is too short and too uncertain." "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I am falling in love with you. Fast, maybe too fast, but I cannot help it. And I am saying that I do not want to wait years before making something official between us. I know we should probably court properly for a year or more, let people get used to the idea, but I do not want to wait that long." Sarah's heart was racing. "Cole, we have only known each other for a few months." "I know, and if you need more time, I will give it to you. But I know what I want, Sarah. I have lost one woman I loved, and it taught me not to waste time when something good comes along." "I am falling in love with you too," Sarah admitted. "It terrifies me how fast this is happening, but I cannot deny what I feel." Cole pulled her close and kissed her, deeper this time with more passion. When they broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "So where does that leave us?" Cole asked. "I think it leaves us seeing where this goes," Sarah said, "but with honesty about what we are feeling and what we want." "What do you want, Sarah?" She took a breath. "I want what I had before, a partner, a family, a full life. I want someone to share things with, to build something with. I want love." "I can give you that," Cole said. "I want to give you that." "Then I guess we are courting," Sarah said, smiling despite her nervousness. "I guess we are," Cole agreed and kissed her again. News of their courtship spread quickly through Muskogee. It was a small town, and 2 widowed ranchers courting was prime gossip material. Most people seemed pleased. Pete Garrison told Sarah he was happy for her. The ladies from church smiled knowingly when she arrived with Cole and his boys for Sunday service. But there were whispers, too, about whether it was too soon, whether it was proper, whether Sarah was disrespecting Thomas's memory. Sarah tried not to let the whispers bother her, but some nights they kept her awake. Cole was patient with her doubts, never pushing, always willing to talk through her concerns. "Let them talk," he said one evening as they sat on her porch. "We know what we feel. That is all that matters." "What about your sons? Are they truly all right with this?" "James asked me just last week when I was planning to propose to you," Cole said with a chuckle. "William keeps hinting that he would like a mother again. And Henry told me that your cooking is better than mine, which I think is his way of giving his blessing." "What did you tell James? About proposing?" Cole looked at her seriously. "I told him I was waiting for the right moment and for you to be ready. So I am asking you now, Sarah, are you ready?" Sarah's breath caught. "Are you proposing?" "Not officially, not without a ring and proper planning. But I am asking if you are ready for me to propose. Because if you are, I will do it right. I will get a ring, make a big gesture, the whole thing." Sarah thought about it, really thought about it. She thought about the months since Thomas had died, about the loneliness and the struggle and the grief. She thought about how Cole had come into her life and brought light back into it. She thought about his sons, who she had grown to care for deeply. She thought about the life they could build together. "Yes," she said softly. "I am ready." Cole's face broke into a huge smile. "Then give me 2 weeks. I need to go to Oklahoma City to get a proper ring, and I want to do this right." 2 weeks later, on a clear September evening, Cole invited Sarah to dinner at his ranch. She dressed carefully in her best dress, the blue one that Thomas had always liked. She had altered it slightly, let out the waist that had grown loose during her months of grief and hard work. When she arrived, the boys were nowhere to be seen. Instead, Cole met her at the door, cleaned up and wearing a suit she had never seen him in before. He looked handsome and nervous, and Sarah felt her own nervousness ratchet up several notches. "Where are your sons?" she asked. "Staying the night at Pete Garrison's place. I wanted us to have privacy for this." He had set the table beautifully, using china that must have belonged to Margaret. Candles flickered in the center, and the whole house smelled of roasted chicken and fresh bread. "You cooked all this?" "Henry helped before he left, but yes, mostly me. I wanted to show you that I can do more than just ranch work." They ate slowly, talking easily about small things, but underneath it all, Sarah could feel the anticipation building. She knew what was coming, and her heart raced with a mixture of excitement and fear. After dinner, Cole led her outside to the big oak tree where the swing hung. The sun was setting, and the evening air was soft and warm. "Sarah," Cole began, taking both her hands in his. "I never thought I would feel this way again. After Margaret died, I thought that chapter of my life was over. I thought I would just focus on the boys and the ranch, and that would be enough. But then you came into my life, all fierce and determined and beautiful, and you reminded me what it feels like to be alive." He dropped to one knee, and Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes. "You have brought joy back into my life and into my sons' lives. We are a better family with you in it. And I want to make that permanent if you will have me. Sarah Thompson, will you marry me?" He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a simple gold band with a single modest diamond. It was not fancy, but it was beautiful in its simplicity. "Yes," Sarah said, the word coming out as half laugh, half sob. "Yes, I will marry you." Cole slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her thoroughly. When they broke apart, both of them were crying and laughing at the same time. "I love you," Cole said. "I should have said that first, but I love you, Sarah." "I love you too," Sarah replied, and saying the words out loud made them feel more real, more solid. They were married 6 weeks later in early November in a simple ceremony at the church in Muskogee. Sarah wore a new dress that she had sewn herself, cream-colored calico with lace at the collar. Cole wore his suit, and his son stood up with him as Sarah had no family to stand with her. The whole town seemed to turn out for the wedding, and if there were still some whispers about the speed of their courtship, they were drowned out by genuine good wishes. After the ceremony, they held a reception at Cole's ranch. Sarah's ranch, she corrected herself. Their ranch now, as they had decided to combine operations. She would move into his larger house, and they would run both spreads as one operation. "Are you happy?" Cole asked her as they danced to music provided by a fiddle player from town. "Happier than I have been in a long time," Sarah replied honestly. "A little scared too. This is all happening so fast. We can slow down if you need to. Take time to adjust." "No, I do not want to slow down. I spent too many months feeling like my life was over. I am ready for it to start again." That night, after the guests had left and the boys had bedded down in the barn to give them privacy, Cole carried Sarah over the threshold of what was now their home. He set her down gently in the bedroom and cupped her face in his hands. "Are you all right with this? With us being together this way?" Sarah appreciated his consideration, but she was ready. She had mourned Thomas, would always carry him in her heart, but she was ready to move forward with Cole. "I am all right," she said, and proved it by kissing him. Their wedding night was tender and sweet, and afterward, Sarah lay in Cole's arms feeling more at peace than she had in months. This was right. This was what she needed. Not a replacement for Thomas, but a new chapter in her life. The next morning, the boys returned to the house, and Sarah woke to the sound of them trying to be quiet in the kitchen and failing miserably. She and Cole came out to find Henry making a disaster of breakfast while James and William tried to help. "Why don't I take over?" Sarah suggested with a smile. The boys looked relieved, and soon she had a proper breakfast going while they set the table. As she cooked, with Cole's arms around her waist and his sons bickering good-naturedly at the table, Sarah felt truly at home for the first time since Thomas had died. The winter of 1891 was hard, as Oklahoma winters often were. Snow fell heavy in December, and the temperature dropped low enough to freeze the water in the troughs. But Sarah faced it with Cole by her side and 3 strong young men to help with the work. They managed both ranches, combining herds and operations in a way that made both spreads more efficient. Sarah taught the boys proper cooking and mending, skills they had lacked with just their father to raise them. Cole taught Sarah the finer points of horse training and cattle management that she had never learned from Thomas. They worked together, building something stronger than either could have built alone. In the evenings, they gathered around the fire. The boys would read, practicing the education their mother had started, or work on mending tack and equipment. Cole would often pull Sarah onto his lap, and they would sit together in comfortable silence, watching the flames dance. "Are you happy?" Cole asked her one night in January. It had become his habit to ask her this regularly, as if checking to make sure their marriage was everything she needed. "I am very happy," Sarah assured him. "More than I thought I would ever be again. No regrets. None," and it was true. Sarah would always carry Thomas in her heart, would always be grateful for the years they had together. But her life was with Cole now, and she embraced it fully. In March, Sarah realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks but waited to be sure before telling Cole. When she finally did, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He swept her up in his arms, spinning her around despite her protests about being careful, then set her down gently and dropped to his knees to place his hands on her still flat belly. "We are having a baby," he said, awe in his voice. "Sarah, we are having a baby. Are you happy?" she asked, throwing his usual question back at him. Happy does not begin to cover it. The boys were equally thrilled. James, at 18, was old enough to remember his mother's pregnancy with Henry and immediately became protective of Sarah. William, 15 and at the age where everything embarrassed him, blushed furiously but looked pleased. Henry, now 13, announced that he hoped for a sister because brothers were boring. "Hey!" James and William protested simultaneously. As spring turned to summer, Sarah's belly grew. The work on the ranch did not stop, but Cole and the boys insisted on taking on more of the heavy tasks, leaving Sarah with lighter duties. She chafed at being treated like she was fragile but appreciated the care behind their concern. In June, Pete Garrison stopped by with news that the territorial inspectors would be coming through again. Sarah felt a moment of panic before remembering that her cattle were all properly branded now, thanks to Cole and his sons. "No worries this time," Cole said, squeezing her hand. "Everything is in order." When the inspectors came, they found both ranches in excellent condition. They complimented Cole on his operation and seemed surprised to learn that Sarah was his wife and equal partner in running both spreads. "Unusual for a woman to be so involved in ranching," one inspector said, not quite disapprovingly but close. "My wife is an unusual woman," Cole replied, pride evident in his voice. "Best rancher I know, and I have been at this for 15 years. After the inspectors left, Sarah kissed her husband thoroughly. "Thank you for that. I only spoke the truth. You are amazing, Sarah. I hope our child, whether boy or girl, inherits your strength and determination." The baby came in October, during the harvest season when the work was at its peak. Sarah had helped with morning chores despite Cole's protests, insisting she felt fine. But by midday, the pains had started and Cole had sent James racing to town for the doctor. The birth was long and difficult, and there were moments when Cole, pacing outside the bedroom door, feared he would lose both Sarah and the baby. But Sarah was strong, as she had proven time and again, and just before dawn the baby's cries filled the house. Cole rushed in to find Sarah exhausted but smiling, holding a tiny bundle. "It is a boy," she said. "A healthy, loud boy." Cole looked down at his new son, red-faced and squalling, and felt his heart expand. "He is perfect. You are perfect." He kissed Sarah's forehead. "Thank you." They named him Thomas, after Sarah's first husband. Cole had suggested it, saying it was important to honor the man who had built the ranch they now prospered on. Sarah had cried when he proposed the name, touched by his generosity of spirit. The older boys were fascinated by their new brother. Henry especially took to the baby, always volunteering to hold him or rock him when he fussed. James and William were more awkward but equally smitten. "He is so small," William said, watching the baby sleep in his cradle. "Were we ever that small?" "Smaller, if you can believe it," Cole replied. And just as loud. As baby Thomas grew, so did the ranch operation. Cole and Sarah worked together seamlessly, their strengths complementing each other. Sarah handled the books and correspondence, managed the household, and still found time to work cattle when she could. Cole oversaw the actual ranching operations, training horses and managing herds with help from his sons. By the time Thomas was a year old, the combined Maddox-Thompson ranch was one of the most successful operations in the area. They had expanded their herd, improved their breeding stock, and built a reputation for quality cattle and fair dealing. In the fall of 1893, James announced his intention to start his own ranch. He was 20 now, and had saved enough money to claim land adjacent to their spread. "You are sure about this?" Cole asked his oldest son. "You are welcome to stay here, take over more responsibility if you want." "I know, Pa, and I appreciate it, but I want to build something of my own, the way you did." "And Sarah, you taught me that it is possible to make it on your own if you work hard enough." Sarah hugged him. "You are going to do wonderfully, and we are right here if you need anything." They helped James build his house and barn, the whole family working together. William and Henry, now 17 and 15 respectively, split their time between helping their father and helping their older brother establish his ranch. And when James married a girl from town, a sweet-faced blonde named Elizabeth, the whole family celebrated. In 1894, Sarah gave birth to a daughter. They named her Margaret, after Cole's first wife, and this time it was Sarah who suggested the name. Margaret had given Cole 3 wonderful sons, and Sarah wanted to honor that gift. Little Margaret had her father's blue eyes and her mother's dark hair, and from the moment she was born, she had her entire family wrapped around her tiny finger. Her brothers doted on her, even James, who rode over regularly from his ranch to visit. One evening, when Margaret was 6 months old and Thomas was 3, Sarah stood on her porch watching Cole work with a young horse in the corral. The sun was setting, painting everything in gold, and she felt a profound sense of contentment wash over her. "What are you thinking about?" Cole asked later that night as they lay in bed. "About how life works out in unexpected ways," Sarah replied. "2 years ago, I thought my life was over. I was alone, facing losing everything Thomas and I had built. And now look at us. 2 ranches, 5 children, a life fuller than I ever imagined." "5 children?" Cole questioned. "We only have 4, James, William, Henry, and little Thomas and Margaret. That is 5 total, but only 2 of ours." "For now," Sarah said with a smile, "but I am pregnant again." Cole sat up so fast he nearly fell out of bed. "You are, Sarah, that is wonderful." "When?" "Sometime in the spring, I think. I wanted to be sure before I told you." Cole pulled her into his arms, cradling her gently. "I love you so much. You have given me everything I thought I lost when Margaret died. A full life, more children, joy. I do not know what I did to deserve you." "You rode over with your sons when I needed help," Sarah said simply. "You gave me a second chance at happiness. That is more than enough." The third baby, another boy they named Peter after Pete Garrison, who had been such a good friend to both of them, was born in April of 1895. He was an easy baby, content and calm, the opposite of his older brother Thomas, who had been colicky and fussy. With 3 young children and the ranch to run, Sarah's days were full to bursting. But she thrived on the chaos, on the feeling of building something lasting. Cole often found her in the kitchen at dawn, baby Peter strapped to her chest while she cooked breakfast for the family, Thomas playing at her feet, and 3-year-old Margaret helping in the way that small children did, which usually meant making more of a mess than actual help. "You need to slow down," Cole would tell her, taking the baby so she could focus on cooking. "I will slow down when I am dead," Sarah would reply with a laugh. "I spent too much time being still after Thomas died. I never want to feel that way again." William left home in 1896 to work on a big ranch in Texas, wanting to see more of the world before settling down. He promised to return eventually, but both Cole and Sarah understood the pull of adventure for a young man. They sent him off with their blessing and made him promise to write. Henry, now 16, showed no signs of wanting to leave. He loved the ranch, loved working with his father and Sarah, and had a special gift with horses that Cole encouraged. They began breeding horses in addition to cattle, and Henry took charge of that operation with surprising maturity. In 1897, as Oklahoma moved closer to statehood, Cole and Sarah hosted a big celebration at their ranch. James came with Elizabeth and their new baby. William returned from Texas for the occasion, full of stories about his adventures. Neighbors from all over the area gathered to eat and dance and celebrate not just the territory's progress toward statehood, but the community they had built. As Sarah watched everyone she loved gathered together, she felt Thomas's presence for the first time in years. Not sad, not haunting, but peaceful. She imagined him looking down and approving of what she had built with Cole, of the life she had created from the ashes of her grief. "You all right?" Cole asked, coming up beside her. "More than all right," Sarah replied, leaning into him. "I was just thinking about Thomas, about how he would be proud of what we have done here." "I hope so," Cole said. "He started something good, we just carried it forward." "We built something new," Sarah corrected. "Different from what he and I would have built, different from what you and Margaret had, but good in its own way." "The best way," Cole agreed, kissing the top of her head. In 1898, Sarah gave birth to twins, 2 girls they named Rose and Lily. The birth was difficult, and the doctor warned them that Sarah should not have more children. She was 31 now, and her body had been through a lot. 5 children is more than enough," Cole said firmly, holding both tiny girls while Sarah rested. "We have been blessed beyond measure." I will not risk you for more." Sarah agreed, though part of her felt a pang at the thought that her childbearing years were over. But looking at her family, at Cole and their 5 children and his 3 sons who were building their own lives, she felt nothing but gratitude. The twins were identical, impossible to tell apart except that Rose had a small birthmark on her left shoulder. They were happy babies who rarely cried, seeming content as long as they were together. Thomas, now 6, appointed himself their protector, and Margaret, at 4, loved playing mother to them. As the new century approached, the Maddox Ranch was one of the largest and most prosperous operations in Oklahoma Territory. Cole and Sarah had successfully combined and expanded both original ranches, and their cattle and horses were known throughout the region for quality. James's ranch was also thriving, and he and Elizabeth had given them 3 grandchildren. William had returned from Texas and was courting a girl from Muskogee. Henry, at 19, ran the horse breeding operation with skill that impressed even the most seasoned ranchers. On New Year's Eve 1899, as the family gathered to celebrate the turn of the century, Sarah stood in the doorway of their home watching everyone she loved. Cole was playing with the twins, now 18 months old. Thomas and Margaret were teaching baby Peter to clap. James was showing his oldest son how to properly hold a rope, 3 generations of Maddox ranchers together. Elizabeth was helping Henry and William set up tables for the celebration feast. Cole caught her eye and smiled, that same smile that had caught her attention all those years ago when he rode over with his sons to help her brand her cattle. So much had changed since that desperate spring day when she thought she might lose everything. She had lost things, certainly. Lost Thomas, lost the future they had planned, but she had also gained more than she ever imagined possible. "Come here," Cole called to her, extending his hand. Sarah crossed the room and let him pull her into his arms, careful of the toddlers at their feet. "What are you thinking about?" He asked, as he so often did. "About how grateful I am," Sarah replied. "About how my life fell apart and came back together in a completely different pattern, but a beautiful one. No regrets." It was still his favorite question, even after all these years. Sarah smiled. "Not a single one." "Well, maybe one." "What is that?" "That it took losing everything for me to find you, but I suppose that is how life works sometimes. You have to break before you can rebuild into something stronger." "We are strong," Cole agreed. "We built this together, Sarah. Everything we have, we created side by side." As midnight approached and the new century dawned, Sarah stood surrounded by her family and thought about that young widow who had stood at her corral fence, desperate and alone, watching unmarked cattle and wondering how she would survive. She had not just survived, she had thrived. She had found love again, built a family, created a legacy that would last for generations. "Happy New Year," Cole whispered in her ear as the clock struck midnight. "Happy New Century," Sarah replied, kissing him. "Here is to the next 100 years of the Maddox Ranch." "Here is to us," Cole corrected. "To you and me and this life we built." And as fireworks lit up the Oklahoma sky and their children cheered and their grandchildren laughed, Sarah Thompson Maddox knew that she had found exactly what she needed. Not the life she had planned, but the life she was meant to live. A life built on loss and perseverance, on second chances and new beginnings, on the simple act of one cowboy riding over with his sons when a widow needed help. It was a life rich with love and purpose, with children and grandchildren, with land and legacy. And as Sarah looked at Cole, saw the love in his eyes and the promises they had kept to each other, she knew that whatever challenges the new century brought, they would face them together, just as they had faced everything else. The ranch would continue to grow and prosper. Their children would marry and have children of their own. The land would pass from generation to generation, carrying with it the story of how Sarah Thompson, alone and desperate, and Cole Maddox, a widower with 3 sons, had come together to build something lasting. But that night, as the old century gave way to the new, all that mattered was the warmth of Cole's arms around her, the sound of their children's laughter, and the knowledge that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Home. Loved. Complete. Years would pass. Sarah would grow old alongside Cole, watching their children and grandchildren and eventually great-grandchildren carry on what they had built. There would be hard times and good times, droughts and abundant years, losses and celebrations. But through it all, Sarah would remember that spring day in 1891 when a cowboy rode over with his sons and gave her back her future. And she would remember that sometimes, when everything falls apart, it is only making room for something better to be built in its place. Sometimes the ending of one story is just the beginning of another, more beautiful than you could have imagined. Sometimes all you need is someone willing to help you brand your cattle and stay to share your life. Cole died peacefully in his sleep in 1920 at the age of 61. Sarah lived another 5 years, long enough to see Oklahoma established as a state, to see automobiles replace horses, to see the world change in ways neither she nor Cole could have predicted. But through all those changes, the ranch remained solid and enduring, a testament to what they had built together. On her own deathbed in 1925, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, Sarah's last words were about that day Cole first rode over to help her. "He saved me," she whispered to her daughter Margaret, now a grown woman with children of her own. "Not just the ranch, me. He saved me and taught me how to live again." And Margaret, who had heard the story many times, smiled and held her mother's hand and said, "I know, Mama. And you saved him right back. That is what love is." It was a fitting end to a story that had begun with desperation and ended with legacy. The Maddox Ranch continued for generations, always passed down through the family, always remembered as the place where 2 broken people came together and built something whole. The place where a widow with unmarked cattle and a cowboy with 3 sons found each other and created a love story for the ages. And if sometimes, in the quiet of an Oklahoma evening, when the sun set over the grassland in shades of gold and orange, people claimed to see 2 figures standing together at the corral fence, watching the cattle graze peacefully, well, no one was surprised. Some loves are strong enough to echo through eternity, and the love between Sarah Thompson and Cole Maddox was exactly that kind of love. Their story became legend in Muskogee, told and retold through generations. The widow who would not give up, the cowboy who rode over to help, the family they built together, the legacy they left behind. It was a story about loss and renewal, about second chances and the courage to embrace them, about the simple power of one person reaching out to help another in their time of need. And it all started with unmarked cattle, and a desperate widow, and a cowboy who rode over with his sons and ended up staying for a lifetime. That is how the best love stories begin, not with grand gestures or love at first sight, but with simple kindness, with showing up when someone needs you, with building something together one day at a time until you look up and realize you have created something beautiful and lasting. The ranch stands still, passed down through the generations, a living monument to Sarah and Cole and the love they found in the aftermath of loss. And every spring, when the cattle need branding, someone in the family always tells the story of how it all began, keeping alive the memory of the widow and the cowboy and the second chance that became a forever love.